And I think there is sometimes that sense that, you know, the reason I'm not claiming benefits, the reason I'm not unemployed, the reason I'm not an asylum seeker is because, you know, I'm better than those people. And although people might not necessarily acknowledge that consciously, I think there's that, certainly sometimes there's that kind of subconscious undertone to it. I hope that the scope of this is a little bit wider than the kind of people and the services that we usually communicate a lot with, because I think they already understand what we do and why we do it. I think my hope is, you know, a few people read the story who don't really understand what we do and what addiction and recovery are about.
So I'd always, they'd always have some sort of satirical bent to them. My early comics, they'd be about the media or something political, something that was niggling me that week. You know, I needed to scratch an itch. But after a while of doing comics about myself, I was starting to bore myself a little bit, I've got to be honest. And that's why I was looking at for a project like this to really get my teeth into other people's stories. A lot of what I see in the media, in culture in general, is just, it's glossy, it's all, you know, unrealistically cool and sexy and optimistic and all the rest of it. And I just think, let's just reset our expectations here and, you know, acknowledge that pain happens, you know, because I'd feel more alone in a world that didn't acknowledge pain. My initial idea was to find people who were going through a crisis and tell their story. And the idea was to find people on the streets, maybe who were begging for money or something like that, and just spend a bit of time with them and listen to what they had to say. I wasn't getting anywhere with that idea because I couldn't get past small talk. I was eventually pointed in the direction of Project 6.
So initially Glenn met with all the Progress clients who attended a Friday morning recovery group, pitched the idea to them and then asked who'd be interested, and there was quite a lot of interest. And so we arranged a series of meetings on the following Fridays for 6 weeks probably. They took slightly different forms depending on who was being interviewed. I think that's kind of really reflected in the artwork.
Because yeah, there was often times in those interviews that I was just stumped for words and I didn't know where I was or what I was going to say or do. And after I'd compiled all my notes from that meeting with Claire, I just looked at it and thought, like, what have I done here? Like, is this my fault? Like, was I not following? Was I not on the ball? Or, you know, but eventually, after just looking at how much it would jump from one bit to another and then back again, and, you know, I just realised that that's how she told the story. So how else would you want to tell the story other than how she told it?
There is something really therapeutic about having an opportunity to reflect back on your life. I think people quite often, if they can get over the trust issues, they quite often feel a lot of benefit from having the opportunity to tell the story. I think it's quite validating. By ordering your thoughts in a way that you have to communicate them verbally to somebody, it helps you to make sense of them yourself. The way I explain it is that our kind of thoughts aren't particularly ordered, and when we, in order to kind of put them, to structure them and put them into sentences to explain them to other people, that helps us to understand what we're thinking and feeling.
When you haven't got a lot and, you know, maybe the past 10, 20 years, all you've got to show for it are your experiences, for someone to say, well, actually, that's really interesting, that's worth something, and to take
those experiences are important. Yeah.
That can be,
You see that all the time in group, this idea that actually, you know, by sharing I can help somebody else who's in a similar situation. There's the real opportunity for stories like this to change people's opinions a little bit. I think there is a lot of stigma and judgment attached to addiction and recovery, and I think one thing that's really highlighted in the stories that's been told is that there's a massive breadth of background, cultural background, different life experience, education, you know, class, all that sort of stuff. there's a breadth of that across all the different stories, and yet it doesn't protect people from the kind of consequences of addiction. It can happen to anybody.
Look, it seems weird looking at it in print. It's like my iPad's been printed.